Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. Again, for the record, I'm Gail Henriksen. I'm the Clatsop County Community Development Director. We're here today to talk about a proposed project that John Dunzer is involved with entitled Bore 3. I'm going to just call around people as I see them on my screen and we can all introduce ourselves. So I'll start with Ted. You're on mute, Ted.
There we are. Ted McLean, Clatsop County Public Works Director.
Okay. Kurt. You're also on mute, Kurt.
I thought I clicked it. Kurt Donaldson, Napa Fire Chief.
Thank you. Dan.
Dan, Oregon Department of State Lands, and Aquatic Resource Coordinator, permitting person for this county.
Brett.
Hi there, I'm Brett Estes. I'm the North Coast Regional Representative for the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Wally.
I'm Wally Adams. I work for Oregon Department of Energy and Facility Siting.
Well, David, are you ready to introduce yourself? Okay, we'll come back to David in a minute. Garrett.
I am Garrett Phillips with the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force.
Terry.
Terry Hendricks, Assistant Public Works Director, Clatsop County.
Okay. And is it Melissa?
It is Melissa Graper, DEQ Regional Solutions.
Okay, thank you. Robert.
Robert Bradley, I'm with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, District Fish Biologist for the North Coast.
Okay, we'll go back to David. He's leaving his desk, so we'll come back to him again. And then Mr. Dunzer, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. John Dunzer, Dunzer, Columbia Bioenergy, LLC.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I appreciate everyone's time today. Before I turn it over to you, Mr. Dunzer, I just want to give everybody a little bit of an overview of where we're talking. This is a project that's on the west side of Clatsop County, up along the Columbia River. For those who were involved in the Bradwood LNG project, it's that same project site from several years ago. So just east of the county line, adjacent with Columbia County. There is a mixture of zoning districts on the property ranging from aquatic conservation, aquatic natural, we have marine industrial, and then we've got a lot of F80 over here on the west side of Clifton Road. There are some floodplain issues, wetlands, geologic hazards, and some big game habitat that also encompass this site. So there are a lot of challenges or opportunities depending upon your perspective here. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Dunzer, to explain what your project concept is, and then we'll just see how the discussion goes from there.
Okay, in your description, you were talking about west and east. Those should be reversed. I mean, it's just the way it is. We're on the east side of the county, the site is, and this is on the west side of the border with Columbia. So anyway.
Yes. Thank you.
I was involved as a consultant with this project, and I actually was a litigant with the Columbia River Keepers about the design of this particular project when it was with an LNG type of a usage. The design, I felt, wasn't adequate in terms of using the best practices of LNG at that time. And we actually ended up taking it together with the Tuluba. And I believe it's been so long. Anyway, the project did not go ahead primarily because we were talking about a project that was much larger when you consider the amount of dredging that would need to be done for the size of the ship that was proposed to be used was much larger than the 75 acres, which had been identified by the county as a medium-sized industrial zone. So at that particular point in time, it became difficult. The dredging problem was difficult because of the size of the ship. And there were a number of other issues, but as it turned out, the developer did not proceed with the project. But I was left with all of the backup data, all the environmental studies, all the past information, and I was hired by the owner of the property to pursue something that would be much smaller and would not have the issues that we're concerned with the extensive dredging and so forth. And we proposed something that was a much smaller type project, and it got to this particular stage. However, it was identified as needing a large number of reviews that were required, like stage 4 for DMD and those kind of things, and the property owner did not wish to pursue it. So I've been working with the state of Oregon and then the organization that worries about emissions within the state of Oregon. My background is in process engineering. I didn't know personally that people that originally proposed the Bradwood LNG project, and my goal here is to take the information that we've now determined out of the Global Warming Commission of Oregon, where I've been basically a participating member, and reduce emissions. The BOR stands for the best opportunity for reducing emissions. It's now that particular agency is charged with by the legislature as trying to meet the state's goals on reducing energy emissions of CO2 and all other emissions of CO2 to meet the goals set by the Paris Conference and a few other things like that. And what it appears to me is that there seems to be a lot of activity that's going on in the state legislature, which has gotten us to a goal down close to where we need to be to meet all the goals of qualifying for all the Paris requirements within the state of Oregon by eliminating coal and a number of other things, which I'm sure are going to raise their ugly head. Basically, it's eliminating a lot of things that we're used to, changing the type of cars we're doing, changing the design of the houses, changing a lot of things which are in the works and have been basically programs that have been approved. However, there are some issues with that we don't meet the goals right now, and we're looking, the Oregon Global Warming Commission is looking for some other ways that maybe we can reduce emissions and reduce them quicker to eliminate problems associated with global warming. And it became clear that there's a couple of areas where the state of Oregon has some great opportunities to reduce emissions on programs that don't exist right now. One of them has to do with using hydrogen in fuels for semi-trucks and so forth, and then another one happens to be in the area of eliminating the use of kerosene for aircraft fuels. And so what this project proposes to do is to manufacture aircraft fuels and barge them up on the site, and out of primarily slash lumber. And this would be the slash that's left over from the cleanup of the floor of the forest. And obviously it would be brought to the site with a barge, and then it would be used to basically provide the sugars, and then it would be acted upon by the hydrogen, and we would make a drop-in aircraft fuel that could be barged up to PDX, which the airlines have been using this alternative because they love it, because they don't have to change out their engines. And it's now becoming less expensive, and it would get rid of a lot of this slash that's so inherently bad for forest fire problem. And then the second thing we would be doing would be creating a power supply that is what we call blue hydrogen, not green hydrogen, but blue hydrogen, which would take take a normal type power plant, and instead of using water as the working fluid, would use CO2 as the working fluid, and it automatically, the process itself, which by the way has been proven at a commercial level and is active in Europe right now, and has a brand new United States proponent, which is called Baker Hughes, a company that I've worked with before. They're responsible for getting these projects approved. It would provide basically a 24/7 type of power, but it would not require any collection of the CO2. The CO2, what's wrong with the power plants now, the gas-powered power plants, among a lot of things, is it's very expensive to clean up the exhaust of these power plants. Even though it is fairly inexpensive to generate power, you've still got CO2 in the exhaust. But it can be taken out, but it's expensive, and it isn't a great job, and we've had a lot of trouble trying to get it up to commercial stage. This particular process, which is available and which has been commercialized and would be smaller, right around the 50 megawatt range, would provide 24/7 type of power that would be able to be used with a grid that's primarily solar and wind, to back up the grid during times when it is not able to generate the required thing because the sunlight is not there or the wind is not there. This would always be there, and we would be using this particular process to generate power. But what we would use, we would do carbon capture and storage with the output of this, which is required with an existing oil field that's up in the Kenai Peninsula area of Alaska, and we would be drawing, we would be basically using the CO2 and put it in a ship. The ship would be small. It would be less than the 40-foot. It would not. The CO2 we use a process called. The easiest way to describe it is liquid water. But basically it's particulates that are chemically modified to be able to hold on to the CO2 and transport it as a particulate matter in a regular or bulk transport with no greater draft than 40 feet. Common vessel it would not be a hazardous cargo. It's just, and it's at a very low temperature and a very low pressure to keep it stored. And then we would bring back from the same Alaska trip, we would bring back from the same facility that we were using to store the carbon, and we would bring back some gas and to the site and use it. So we wouldn't require any power lines to get gas to the site or whatever. It would just be the return trip. We wouldn't use any, we wouldn't have to empty the ballast tanks. We'd simply take this, what's called liquid water, although that's not the present term of it, but that's the term I'm used to, and take it off site, raise the temperature and the pressure slightly to be able to release the gases, and then use those on site, and then put new gases on it, put CO2 on it to go up to Alaska, bring natural gas in from Alaska, uses to the circulation, and there would be really no dredging out in there because the Corps of Engineers says that we've got 40 feet of draft there, and it's historically always been a port for ships that doesn't require a lot of dredging. It doesn't require dredging at all for this size of ship. So it's basically to fill the holes that we presently have in our plan of the state to be able to reduce emissions to the levels that are required by solving some problems that exist right now, because you have the bulk of the power being supplied to industry and to consumers that is done with that is generated by solar and wind, and you have the inherent problems with the grid that exist when you have just solar and wind. You need something in there to take care of the part of the grid that would fill in the holes of time when you don't have enough sunlight and you don't have enough wind. So it's a backup kind of a thing. And then we have on site right above the site on the property is basically a mountaintop which we can use for water storage up there, building a prefab tank up on the top of that mountain and using the power that we generate that's not being critically used at the time to pump water up into it. And then at the critical times of 4 to 9 p.m. in the evening, be able to use that flow as hydropower to be able to supplement the grid with some energy storage that's very, very inexpensive at that time. So that in a nutshell, we have, of course, rail access to this site. We have marine access to this site. We have road access to the site, but the road access is definitely limited. But a lot of these problems have already been worked out. We're only working on the project in the that's already zoned industrial. There's a lot of the areas, the sensitive areas around on the site have all been, will not basically be touched. And I think it's just a great project. The road would be brought up to the standards that would be necessary to be able to get fire equipment in there. We have a very limited amount of workers on site and a very limited amount of construction employees, because all of these plants that I've been talking about are all packaged already. They're already designed. They're all ready to be flipped onto a rail car or onto a barge and brought directly to the site. So we have a minimum amount of construction work that's required. And this directly fits onto the brand new incentives that the federal government has just enacted with its inflation reduction bill that was just passed. All of these incentives that the federal people have put on are active in these projects, these portions of this project, and would make it a very attractive investment for industry with basically no further involvement in terms of subsidies or whatever would come out of those subsidies that were enacted by the federal government. And that's what has been holding up my pursuing this project, because number one, we've had a lot of technology changes, especially in the area of hydrogen. We now have some very good ways, so maybe we can generate green hydrogen even more cheaply than blue hydrogen, in which case we might just substitute a green hydrogen module instead of a blue hydrogen module. But, there's a lot of opportunities to do this. Very straightforward. There's really, although hydrogen itself is can be an explosive type of a thing, this is really quite a small use of it. It would be contained into shipped out probably on rail cars in these truck trailers that would have decompressed tanks would already be mounted on their semi-truck backs, and they would simply be used to pull them to the stations along the hydrogen highway there that have already been identified all along I-5 and I-84. And there's quite a bit of interest on the part of industry in doing these types of projects. And this seems like it would be in the right scale to be able to, because right now, Oregon doesn't generate any hydrogen, and Oregon doesn't generate any aircraft fuel substitutions, and Oregon doesn't do a lot of these things. But we need to do some of these things because we haven't really met the goals yet that we started out to meet as far as reducing emissions. We're a long way there towards doing it, but if things don't work out too well for the electric cars, issues become, there's a lot of things can stop plans from developing the way they were planned, but we need to get on with this way, with all the practical ways of saving money in terms of reducing the costs of some of these changeovers when we have to get rid of the combustion engines and so forth. So that's what this process has done. It's sort of a filler, and it's designed to be done. This would be the first of what might be 10 of these around the West Coast, which would be using the same sort of principles. But it's a filler for the solar and wind energy, which provides the basic renewable types of energy for the grid, and we will be doing a lot of electrification, but we need something to stabilize the grid, and that's what this whole process is meant to do. And in terms of the aircraft fuel, there's a lot of great, this process that we're planning on using was developed by the United States government. So, and it's already been demonstrated, and it's already flown in Alaska Airlines planes. And so all you do is mix it in with some kerosene, depending on how good a job you did in making it, and you reduce your emissions in the aircraft. You don't have to change out the engines, you don't have to do a lot of things. You just save the emissions. Anyway, that's the idea. And it's designed to provide some employment, but not a whole lot of employment. It's fairly straightforward technology. All of these concepts in this have been tested up to commercial stage, and we're not doing anything very unusual with it. The site is, of course, as everybody is pretty well, is just basically an old township that's been leveled and filled up with dredging from the river to the level that the county wanted it filled up to, and so it's a matter of just putting in the appropriate facilities, and I don't think I'm pretty aware of most of the issues that were brought up about this site when it was considered for an LNG, and this doesn't have anything to do with LNG because we're not going to liquefy this natural gas at all. We're not going to use a big ship. We're not going to do any of these things. It's a regional facility with no liquid natural gas tankers, with no hazardous. All of these ships that are filled with CO2 and so forth are completely filled with a non-hazardous type of a material that's shipped all the time. So that's all I've got to say. When I moved up into Clatsop County, I made a goal of trying to develop some industry up there besides flipping hamburgers and filling beer bottles. And so this is one of them. And nobody's been able to find a use for this site. I don't think the LNG was the right use for it because it wasn't a regional. This is a regional site. And to the best of my knowledge, we meet all the regional requirements. And I'm just not aware of any real problems with this use or any of it. But then again, it's been 5 or 6 years since I've been involved in this. I don't know what the changes have been in the general plan. I don't think they've been significant, but or anything to be. We're doing good things that don't bother anybody, are good for the environment, are good for the country, and create some positive results. That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunzer. I'm going to open up for questions, first of all, if anybody has questions for Mr. Dunzer, and then I want to spend some time talking about any issues or concerns or permits or process that Mr. Dunzer would need to be aware of if he wants to move his project forward. So I guess first off, does anybody have any questions?
This is Dan Carey, Department of State Lands. I have a question. So all we've seen so far is Gail's images of maps from the county. Do you have a
I'm sorry,
typical,
what?
do you have a typical manufacturing facility size? Any sketch maps, anything to show us where you would build this thing? Besides just
We have
during,
a site plan, yes.
I mean, besides just the zoning. I mean, there's wetlands in that zoning. There's all kinds of things in the zoning that
Well, we
aren't.
have pictures of each of these. We have pictures of the power plant that was built down in Texas, and this would look very similar to that. We have pictures of the. We do not have pictures of the. Well, I shouldn't say that. We do have pictures of the one, the facility that would generate the aircraft fuel. These, they're rather modest types of, modest types of industrial facilities as these things go. There's no height limits that I'm aware of. There's no intrusion limits that I'm aware of. We have to get the permits for these. We have to worry about the emissions that we'll be doing and so forth and so on. But I don't have a glossy of how each of these things would be laid out now. Right now, I'm sort of faced with the idea in mind that we've already had a developer go bankrupt at this site. I'm concerned that where there are some issues that anybody considering making further investments in this site should be aware of as far as an investment, because right now industry is, I'll be quite frank with you. I mean, I don't really care. I'm not going to have any personal. I'm just trying to do this because of my grandkids. Okay, I'm not going to have any kind of a personal thing to gain in this thing. But what I'm concerned about is I'm going to have a hard time finding business partners if we've got something lurking out there that I don't know about, that I don't feel we can issue, because I don't want any more of these companies going bankrupt, and I don't want any more of these companies coming in and not being in a position to do a good job of designing these facilities, which was the case with the LNG plant. And that's why I ended up suing them, because it was a bad design, number one. And so I'm hesitant. This is just my first little glimmer of, but I can put together some pictures of existing facilities that are commercialized side and so forth. It won't be a complete engineering design of the interior of this plant. It won't be a whole lot more than pictures of these types of facilities at these sizes that exist on other project sites. And what we're going to do is put them on this site. So
What I was asking, sir, what I was asking is, we as agencies are a bit more reactive. I mean, concepts are interesting. You can see pictures, but how does that lay on this land is what's important to me. And I mean, is the building, we're looking at this aerial photo that Gail has, we've got these sandy areas, the building going to be within those sandy areas, or it's going to cover the entire?
Well, that's what the site plan shows. The site plan's got the site plan's got all of these things on it.
Yeah,
I don't understand. It has the outline of all of the buildings, interior and so forth. Am I missing something? Because I see a plot plan on here that talks about where where the site is and where the buildings are and where the rail yard is and where the ship is and all that kind of stuff. Am I missing something? Do you want something, what's inside of those buildings?
No, Mr. Dunzer, you didn't provide a site plan to us. That was not part of your application or your pre-application package that you prepared.
We don't know anything. We don't know what it looks like at all.
It's figure 19 of the what I submitted, which was the project description, dated February 24th. I'd be happy to provide some more.
Yeah, we don't have a figure 19. And we don't have any drawing.
You don't have a figure, do you have a project description booklet?
I wouldn't call it a booklet. We have a couple different letters, one dated March 29th of 2021, one dated February 11th of this year. We have the project pitch. We have the table of actions to be modeled. We have
No, this
cost
is a project description dated February 24th. It's a book of about, I would say, 100 pages.
No, you did not. You did not provide that.
I did provide it, but it was provided with the initial one that I sent you approximately 6 months ago, because I did provide it. So, and I'll be happy to provide it again.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I thought you already had it. And this is sort of what I inquired about, but obviously we had a mistake. I sort of said, do they have copies of this particular project description, which obviously they don't. So I apologize. It has a lot of pictures in it. It has pictures of Alaska. It has all kinds of stuff. So I apologize, but it was there. The reason I put this project description together was for this, and I'll do it again.
Hey, Gail, this is Brett from DOCD. I have a quick question for Mr. Dunzer, if I can.
Yeah, please.
So, Mr. Dunzer, is this really kind of a concept you're trying to put together, or is the project kind of really fleshed out in terms of having investors and everything ready to go? I'm trying to understand, how.
No. We have some people that have indicated an interest in participating in this kind of a project, but they're concerned about the fact that this is the right site for them, and that and so what I have said is that, well, I think we'll take this pre-application meeting and determine whether there's something lurking out there that's going to make this site unusable. It's hard for me to, as someone who's run some pretty big companies in my day, to invest a whole lot of my time and effort if I think that this is not a good fit. And I have gone all the way through what I thought the first time, because I submitted this way back, as earlier days. I submitted this back in, let's see, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, when it was still an energy facility, and it was adequate for them there. It's just been updated to eliminate LNG and keep up with the technology and that kind of stuff. So it's the same level of detail that we plowed through before. So the idea would be, I'm doing this myself because I know enough to do it myself because I've been involved with the old one. So there's no coming up to speed. So the concept, to answer your question, is this is a project that will draw investors, but it will not draw investors unless they feel like this is a good fit for this site and that they will not have to encounter a lot of negative feedback from the community that really isn't based on the fact of, we've grown a lot in the last 15 or 20 years in the area of energy. And this isn't a project put together by the oil and gas people. This isn't a project put together by the tree huggers. This isn't a project put together. This is a project put together by for people to try to solve this energy crisis problem by filling in a hole that exists in our plan to reduce emissions. So from that standpoint, it has. I know this project. I know that there's enough room on there to do it. I know what the problems were with this as it was developed before, what people's concerns were. I was just as concerned as they were. I certainly wouldn't want to do it. The technology has all evolved since then, and actually on the line, it's all been commercialized, and we have pictures of these facilities operating at other sites, and we're just going to put them at this site. And it does have I do have a complete site plan, which is what I thought was required for this, and so. I'm sorry, it's got 37, let's see how many pages. It's got about 60 or so pages. I'm just sorry you don't have it. You should have it. It's there somewhere. It's in one of the past filings, so I apologize. I didn't submit it with the last one. You're absolutely correct, because it was already there. So it was there for the first one, so I apologize. I can't answer any more questions, I guess, that are related to if you're saying, do you have a commitment for $500 million to build this plant? No, I don't. And I wouldn't expect anybody that is in their right mind to give a commitment for a $500 million plant in Clatsop County based upon the attitudes of the that were expressed there and the reputation that were expressed there in the past. I just think I know what those requirements are, and I think they're easily solved. And they're easily solved by making a regional facility out of what was designed a long time ago as a facility that was meant for somebody to make a lot of money off of. This is just doing stuff that's going to be required, and we've moved ahead a lot in terms of knowing what we need to do to remove these emissions. And this plant is going to produce some products that are necessary to fill the holes up in this plan and get us as a country and get us as a world so that we have a complete energy grid that won't produce emissions, so we'll be able to get our temperatures down. So there you go. And I don't know how to tell you anymore. So I hope I've answered your question. I guess I haven't.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr.
What would you like me
Dunzer.
to do?
So generally speaking, I know because we don't have your site plan, it's hard for us to give you very specific feedback. If you can't see the chat box, but I know that there have been some notes in here about making jet fuel in larger quantities will have certain requirements under ORS. I don't know if Mr. Adams wants to talk about that. Yes, I see his hand up.
I would be happy to. Thanks, Gail. So, yeah, Mr. Dunzer. So I work for Oregon Department of Energy again and facility siting. So I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I can't hear who you are and what representative you make. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Let me try again. So my name is Wally Adams, and I work for the Oregon Department of Energy.
Okay, Oregon Department of Energy. I know them well.
Yeah.
Zelensky. I worked with Zelensky there. Okay.
Yeah, he was here, I think, quite a bit before my time. Anyway, so Oregon has what's known as the Energy Facility Siting Council. Have you heard of that body?
I'm familiar with that body, yes.
Okay, so there are at least a couple things that you said. I mean, I'm having the same problem everybody else is with understanding, really what it is that you're proposing without having an actual proposal. But just from your verbal description, there were a couple of things that caught my attention. So the first one is jet fuel. If you're going to make fuel, basically, if you're going to make liquid fuel in Oregon in larger quantities, and larger quantities are defined in the statute, but that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Energy Facility Siting Council. So you would have to get a site certificate from FSEC in order to construct and operate that facility.
Okay.
That's the first one. The second one that caught my attention is you talked about 50 megawatts power generation. So likewise, and this is the main thing that FSEC regulates, anybody who wants to build a sizable power generation facility in the state of Oregon, you're also going to have to get a site certificate from FSEC. The threshold generally is 25 megawatts, but you know, it depends a little bit on what the power source is. So it's different for, you know, wind, for example, or geothermal. But for what I think you're describing, it's probably going to be a 25 megawatt threshold. And so that would require a site certificate from FSEC. There may be other things. If you need pipelines and things, there are also requirements there. So, but it's a safe bet that if you wanted to build what you have already described, that you would need to go through FSEC. And it's an involved process. There are periods for public comment. It's a very formal process. It's a costly process, frankly, and depending on, you know, how many issues or how well sited the facility is, how many natural resource and cultural resource issues there may be, how much public opposition there may be. You know, you're talking about maybe on the low end, a couple $100,000 just for the fees, because it's fee based, or it could be substantially more. So just so you're not caught off guard, but those are kind of the first things that come to mind for me.
Let me just, what we're trying to do here is get the first government approval necessary, which is in order to apply for these types of certificates and submit the data and get this permit and get that permit, we have to be, there has to be an approval given by the county to that this land use is appropriate for this particular project. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what we're worrying about. It's
so what I'm saying, Mr. Dunzer, is that approval, the county can't issue that approval for the type of project you're talking about. That you have to come to FSEC for at least those portions, and the land use approvals are integrated as part of that process. The idea with FSEC is it's supposed to be a one-stop shop for those type of things. And then you can choose to either go through FSEC's land use approval process, or you can go through the county's process. That's one of the choices that you have to make. But it's not like you're going to first get county approval and then go to FSEC. It won't work that way.
Okay, well, that's the way that I remember it working. And if it doesn't work that way anymore, then I guess I'd need to know that, because
It hasn't worked that way for a long time, sir.
Well,
anyway, I'll stop there.
There is no loops anymore. There is no more loops. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by that. I can't answer that.
Land use compatibility statements that I have to have filled out and signed by the county saying that this land use, so that I can then apply for these kind of permits?
It doesn't mean anything to FSEC.
It doesn't mean
any. You could do that probably, but it won't mean a thing as far as getting a site certificate from FSEC. The land use approval will still be part of that process. The only part of it, I will say one thing.
I'm sure you're right, but I can't get anywhere without getting this loops to start with. I can't go anywhere. I can't apply for anything until I get the loops done. You
can apply for a site certificate from FSEC without the loops. I'm not sure about what other things you're talking about, but anyway, again, you would have to come through FSEC in some way, shape, or form. The one thing I will add is that there are some exemptions for manufacturing liquid fuels from biomass. Now, you still, in that case, you have to come to FSEC. You can't assume that you would get it, but you would apply for an exemption. And that can be done. So we granted an exemption to a biofuels plant here earlier this year. And it's a much shorter time frame and a much less expensive process to do that.
Okay. Well, that's certainly what we'd be doing, is using the biomass for developing and then use the hydrogen to beef it up. But I'm somewhat, it says right here, the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. And it says, what is the land use compatibility of LUCs is a form developed by DEQ to determine whether a DEQ permit or approval will be consistent with local government comprehensive plans and land use regulations. Why is the LUC required? Sticks and other state agencies with permitting or approval activities that affect land use are required by Oregon law to be consistent with local comprehensive plans and to have a process for determining consistency. So this is the very first, LUCs is required for nearly all permits. So I'm trying to do this the way that I thought we've been doing this for a long time. And I guess, are we saying that I don't need this LUCs anymore? I can go right to you, because that's not the way it used to work. I couldn't go anywhere without getting the county to approve it. As far as land use compatibility, that it was in compliance with the local government comprehensive plans. And that's what I'm here for. And because that's where I was told to start. Now, if that's wrong, obviously, then I should go somewhere else.
I can't speak for every other agency. What I can speak for is that, again, large energy generation and fuel manufacturing facilities fall under the Energy Facility Siting Council. The process is intended to be a one-stop shop so that you don't have to go to multiple agencies to get approval. So during the process, we would interface.
I guess I'm not familiar with the one-stop shop, because the only way that I knew that you did it in the way that I've always been involved with and so forth is going through this to start it with. And then once you get the LUCs done, you get it and get it signed by the thing, then get it signed by the county. Then you can go ahead with permit approvals. And I think what you're talking about is permit approvals. But what you're saying is land use compatibility has been taken out of that and given to the individual permit people, I guess. Is that correct?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if you want to build a large scale energy facility in Oregon, you'll more likely than not, you will fall under FSEC. You'll either need a site certificate from FSEC, possibly multiple site certificates, or at a minimum, you would need an exemption. But you'll have to come through FSEC, and land use approval is part of that process. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, could you tell me what where this is written down so I can follow the right rules?
Yep, it's ORF 469. Yep.
469, 469.
Yep, .300.
.300, okay.
Those are the statutes that apply for basically for the Energy Facility Siting Council. So that's your starting point.
Okay, then I'll start there and I won't worry about Clatsop County. Is that correct? Until later or something. I don't know. When do I worry about Clatsop County?
I think it's always good to
get a building permit.
be in contact with the county. The county will be involved in the land use approval. It's not like FSEC is going to usurp that. But
Okay, all right.
but yeah, that's not the only place that you'll need to go on this one.
All right, great. Well, that's good. Good to know. I will do that, and I'll get a copy of this. And I apologize for not having this book in front of you because I mean, we have, you know, so we've already been surveyed. I already have building plans as far as outline goes and so forth, and elevation. I just don't have all the equipment inside of it yet. So, but I will, and you're with the Department of Energy, is that correct?
Correct.
Pardon?
Yes, Department of Energy.
Yes.
And Gail
Okay.
has my contact information, you know, and she can pass that along to you if you want to contact me, you know, after this meeting, and, you know, we can talk to you more. We're a little bit limited, so we are fee-based. And so we're a little bit limited how far we can go before you would have to get to a point where, in our terminology, you did a notice of intent and, you know, basically had at least like a deposit so that we had somewhere to charge the cost to. But we will do a pre-application meeting as well, just like you're doing here. You know, we will do that as a courtesy beforehand to try to familiarize you with the requirements.
Okay, fine. I'll do that.
All right. Well, thank you. I think even though we didn't have a site plan and we couldn't get a lot of specifics, I think that was a very productive conversation because I know for years Mr. Dunzer has been trying to move this forward and we've not been able to get him through the county process without involving the state agency. So I think the discussion, as long as it took about how this is going to proceed or will need to proceed, I think was very helpful. So thank you. What I'll do now is following the meeting, I'll just do a summary letter to put together the points that we talked about and everyone's contact information. And then I will send that out to everyone. In the meantime, Mr. Dunzer, if you can get me a copy of your site plan, I will get that out to everyone who is on the call today as well.
Okay.
Robert,
You want
I
the
see.
whole book because the whole book describes everything. It's,
Yeah,
or I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, the whole book would be great. And I see
Okay.
Robert Bradley, Mr. Dunzer, Robert Bradley has his hand raised. So go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, just briefly, you know, our Department of Fish and Wildlife role is largely advisory to the other permitting agencies. But without seeing the site plan and just some conversation about it, road improvements, I will throw out that we have authority on fish passage. And so any stream crossings or fish bearing waterway crossings will need to run through our agency as far as fish passage approval. Typically those are included as conditions of any other permits too, but most of the time relatively simple from our end, but just throwing that out there so you're aware of that process as well.
Okay, no problem. I understand. That's fine. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gail, for setting this up. I apologize for not being as well equipped as I thought I was.
Okay, and we have Dan Carey has his hand raised, and then I think we do, before we leave, we just need to briefly talk about the road as well. So go ahead, Dan, and then I'll go to Terry.
I was just going to say, Mr. Dunzer, that if this was just a manufacturing plant, you would be exactly right. You need to get the Lux first. I just want to make sure that you knew that that wasn't the wrong way to go. It's just the wrong way to go for an energy facility.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, it was the way we were. It's the way we were going on the LNG facility, which was an energy facility, and I think there were, what we found is that maybe there was a one-stop shop was created somewhat after that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I know that that when Bradwood went through this, and when I went through a second generation of this, making it smaller and so forth, we were all having to deal with preparing the Lux first and getting that approved by the county before we could go anywhere. So, and now that doesn't seem to be, I'm sure the county is still involved, don't get me wrong. It's just, you could go around the county, but you needed to get approval from, I can't remember who it was, what agency you could get it, Business Oregon probably. But anyway, this is fine. The one-stop shop is great. I think it's fine, and it's just different, and I appreciate that. It didn't used to be different to the best of my knowledge. That's my problem, and that's why I guess we have these meetings, because as you can see in I've got the old loops already filled out with all the answers to it and everything we went through before. And obviously, we're going to do it a little bit differently. And it sounds to me like an improvement. I appreciate that. And, I'm sure there's a lot of agencies that would like to get involved in this, as we all would like to get involved in trying to make this emissions reduction program work for people at a price where we can keep our grandkids safe and at a price where we won't have to spend every last dime on trying to pay the prices of the oil and gas companies. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Okay. And Mr. Dunzer, if you have just a moment, I want Terry Hendricks, our Assistant Public Works Director, if he's available, just to talk about the road, because I know that there are probably going to be some road improvements that are going to be required.
There was an agreement identifying all of those improvements, and that was approved by the road department before. I don't know whether they're still there. We're actually making a much smaller facility than the ones that were approved, so I have no reason to believe that the road requirements are going to be any more. I mean, there is a set of road requirements to upgrade that road that were already agreed to. So.
If Mr. Dunzer, if you have a copy of that agreement, when you send Gail the rest of the information, could you include that as well so we could review it?
I certainly will. Right. There was a lot of time and effort to do that. There was a lot of time and effort to worry about the access bridge over the fish bearing. There's a lot of work that's been done. All the environmental work has been done on this site. It may have to be upgraded. The work on the work on the road was done. The work on the bridge, which needs to be replaced on Bradwood Road, that was approved by the county. There were a lot of things that were already approved. Whether these approvals are still, it says it in all the data that I've got that all of these things are vested. I don't know what that means in today's world. It means maybe the guy's wearing a vest. I don't know what the hell it means. But anyway.
All right, thank you very much. Look forward to reviewing that.
Okay, yes, it has been done, whether it's still applicable or not. It was a fairly extensive road revision that was going to be required. I remember that. But I do have a copy of it somehow or other. Okay.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. I got all of this stuff packed away over here, and it seems a shame to just let it all drop when this is a perfectly good site that won't bother anybody, that will enable us to build a better life. So anyway, thank you. Okay, Gail, do you want me to send you this book and this information on the road? And this book is going to tell you all of these things, but I'm sorry it wasn't there. But it was submitted, and I thought when I talked to you before that we had agreed that you had a copy of it, but I guess I misunderstood. I apologize.
I think we misunderstood each other. So yes, so that would be wonderful. And before we go, does anybody have any other general concerns they want to throw out there?
I think my only concerns are the emergency response plan, that kind of stuff. And I'm hoping that that'll be in this book we're going to see. Is that the case, John?
There was an emergency response plan that was generated by the LNG facility. I'm not sure I've got that.
Well, I've got copies of everything between Napa and Bradwood LLC that was ever generated. But I just want to, at some point, we're going to have to update all that stuff and make sure that it's in the
Yeah.
best interests of the community and the people working there.
No, absolutely right. No, that should be done, and we certainly would. I'm sure that would be a requirement to update all of that stuff. Absolutely right. And probably we should go back and take a look at some of these environmental things to make sure no little critters have crept in over the last 15 years while the project has been sitting there. So anyway, I don't want to leave any stones unturned. Don't get me wrong. I just don't want any bankruptcies. I can't go into these people and ask them to put up millions and millions of dollars on a project that they think that the lawyers can sell. That isn't any goddamn good. We got a good need for this project now, and we got people now that understand what the problem is, and it's just the time is right to do something. So thank you very much for your patience.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just a do-gooder.
All right.
I'm just a do-gooder. Okay. I don't have any sinister. I care about my grandkids. I don't really give a shit about many other things, but I care about them. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other concerns or comments for Mr. Dunzer before we end our call today?
Where's the Columbia River Keepers these days? Those guys are really a piece of work. Having been on their team before, I know the kind of people they are, and I just hope that we don't get bogged down in one of these things where the lawyers attempt to bankrupt everybody that wants to do anything, which seemed to be the case the last time I ran into these people. I got no problem with their objectives, but their objectives in many cases are not dedicated to the fact that we want to make things better for my grandkids. So there you go. But, thanks very much for your time and so forth. And it's a beautiful day down here in Southern California. And I'm glad I don't live in Seaside anymore. And because it's different down here. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, yes, thank you everyone for your time, and I'll send a follow-up letter shortly. So thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.